Hi, it's Tash. Welcome to Tash's Library. Today's video is going to be my 10 favorite characters in science fiction and fantasy. Now, this was a pretty tricky list to do because there are some awesome characters out there, but I finally narrowed it down to 10. Some of these are old favorites, some of these are new. Now I'm going to deal with these in no particular order. They're just 10 favorites. It was hard enough to come up with 10. It's way too hard to rank them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Aragon from Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is probably my favorite book of all time. I read it when I was really young and I've reread it several times and it still has stood the test of time. And I could have picked a number of characters from this book, but Aragon for me is just perfect. He is a prime example of non-toxic masculinity. This really noble character who's really loyal, self-reflective, dependable, kind, yet powerful and strong, and great warrior. And it just encapsulates everything about non-toxic masculinity. And I absolutely love him. He's my favorite, and I think the movies have really done him justice as well. The second one is Caiaphas Kane. This is from the Caiaphas Kane series by Sandy Mitchell, which is in the Warhammer 40k universe. This is a dark comedy, sort of military sci-fi that follows Caiaphas Kane, who's the commissar of the armed forces. He is an interesting character because we hear the story from his perspective. And we can never be 100% certain whether he is very, very cowardly or actually this reluctant, humble hero. Part of that is because he writes himself in a very self-deprecating, funny manner, which makes him kind of really cool. And he keeps going on about how he's trying to get away from danger and inadvertently ends up in the midst of it every single time and is all about saving the day. I find his humor so good. I find him so interesting, and everyone seems to really like him in the universe. We glean aspects of his personality from the way other people relate to him, and clearly he's not a bad guy at all, and I feel like he'd be a very interesting character to get to know. A third character for me is fairly recent as well, and this is James Holden. And this is from the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, which is an epic space opera. Now, James Holden, I guess people are divided on him because you could view him as a slightly boring character on some levels, but to me, he's just the quintessential good guy. He's loyal, moral, a really good leader by example, courageous. He's just transparent in his communication, which gets him into a lot of trouble at times. Now, and I've just really liked the way his character has been presented throughout the books. Another one's a bit more contentious, and this is Camlin from the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne, the first book being Malice, and I absolutely loved this series. It's an epic fantasy, which I would describe as Lord of the Rings meets Game of Thrones. Camlin is an interesting one because I can't say too much because his character arc is what I love about him, but I also don't want to give any spoilers. So he's very, very morally grey, and I really like that. A real flawed hero with hidden depths. And I just find that his character development throughout this series is one of the best examples of character developments in SFF literature today. And I absolutely adored getting to know him. So if you haven't read The Faithful and the Fallen, get onto it. Another one is also fairly recent, and I've got quite a lot of recent ones. This is Adrian Marlow from the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio. Now this is an epic space opera fantasy, and it's awesome. I've only read the first one, Empire of Silence, and then the novella that comes after that, The Lesser Devil. The first book looks at how Adrian Marlow is this son of nobility who is then renowned, who's later renowned as being a star killer someone who kills billions of people, and therefore he is absolutely universally hated, but for some he's a hero. And Empire of Silence really starts off looking at how he begins this career, and he's just a fascinating character. He's gutsy, he's resilient, so layered, very human character with both deep flaws and incredible strength of character. And his character developments and his personality are really intriguing to explore. Another one for me is Murderbot, and technically not a person, a cyborg, but this is from the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and it basically is a science fiction series that explores this self-hacking cyborg. Now, he was built to kill people effectively and as a security bot. However, because he hacks his system, he's actually a little bit more of a free agent, and his most favorite thing is watching soap operas. And he is just so funny. He is just, and I say he only because he actually has no gender in the novels, but the audiobook I listened to had a male narrator for Murderbot, and so I just can't get it out of my head that he's a he. So apologies for that. But yeah, so Murderbot basically is this reluctant hero who's constantly struggling between the purpose for which he was built and their innate character. And it's just so cool. And I have to get on with the rest of the series. I've only really read the first 3 and absolutely adored them. And I've heard the full-length novel is incredible. Another one, an old favorite, is Sam Vimes from the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, which is a satirical fantasy series. Now, Sam Vimes is the commander of the Night Watch, which is effectively the police force in Ankh-Morpork, the main city in the series. And he is a highly flawed character, but so lovable. He seems to be really lazy, doesn't care less about his job. He drinks too much. He has questionable personal hygiene issues, but he's just becomes this reluctant hero with great depth of character, and he's sarcastic and quite moral in the end and quite noble while still possessing these personal flaws. And I absolutely love Sam Vimes, and I haven't really come across anyone who doesn't. So I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. Another favorite character is Sazed from the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I don't think I need to say much about Mistborn, except that it's a fantasy series with a hard magic system based on the ingestion of metals. Now, Sazed starts off as quite a side character, and he gradually has more and more airplay in the series. He is fascinating. He's this character who pursues accumulation of knowledge, and he can store it in bands on his body. And he's particularly interested in beliefs and religious systems. And it's fascinating the way he pursues this knowledge. I mean, I love any character who pursues knowledge and enjoys knowledge. But he also is an incredibly wise character in terms of interactions between people, an understanding of the nuances of the world, and also he undergoes significant mental health challenges, and which all makes for this most rounded, wonderful character to explore in this series. Another science fiction character I really like is Mark Watney from The Martian by Andy Weir. I know this is kind of a weird choice, but I love it. This book deals with this scientist who is stranded on Mars and then has to try and survive on his own with virtually no resources. And Mark Watney is a scientist. First of all, that's very attractive to me as a character. I love science, and he's so resourceful and smart and funny and so resilient. He seems to just manage to solve problem after problem, really without ever losing his cool. And I really, really respect that. Ultimately, he's this nerdy action hero, which I'm all for. And finally, I have to go with Drist from the Legend of Drist series by R.A. Salvatore. This is a D&D fantasy series that goes on for quite some time. I've only read the first 5 and I'm absolutely loving it. Now, Drist is a dark elf who grows up in this society that is very backstabby and morally suspect. And he comes to disagree with the morality of his people. And the series then, particularly the first prequel trilogy, deals with how he manages this. Drist, for me, is this highly moral, very brave character who faces extreme threats and discrimination and yet maintains his nobility of character and his loyalty, his friendship, and he becomes this great mentor to other characters later on. I absolutely love him. He's also got a great animal companion, which can never hurt. Awesome. If you haven't read Drist, you really should. It is beautifully written, and particularly the first trilogy that actually deals with Drist's backstory is superb.